This workshop is called Pairing Art and Text, and we're going to be exploring this question for the next roughly 2 hours. I think, as I mentioned in my emails that were sent just before the workshop, we're kind of going to break this time up between sort of a whole group exploration of an art and text pairing, where we'll sort of model for you what that experience would look like, spend some time in breakout rooms, giving you a chance to talk in smaller groups, and we'll have a break in the middle to kind of give you a chance to stretch and get up, because I know 2 hours on Zoom can be a lot. So I think the time will actually fly by pretty quickly. Allie, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Allie Burns, and I'm assisting Phoebe with today's workshop. I am the distance learning coordinator at SAM. And I have been reading and watching nothing interesting. I've been rewatching Friends with my fiance while we eat dinner, because sometimes you just need to watch something you've seen 20 times.
Totally understand. So just want to sort of introduce this key question that we're exploring in today's workshop. We're going to be thinking about how you choose artworks to pair with a text to deepen understanding. And I think that to deepen understanding is really the key here. You know, we're looking at artworks not as an illustration of text in this workshop, but really as a text in their own right, as a rich source that can actually take our understanding of a text to a deeper place and create a really interesting conversation with students. So my hope is that by the end of this 2 hours, you'll have some new ideas, as well as some actual art and text pairing suggestions that you might be able to implement in your teaching. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here with a text. So I'm going to introduce you to a character named X. And I don't know if anyone has read The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, but this is a young adult novel. And the main character is a 15-year-old named Xiomara, or just X, and she writes poetry. And this is an excerpt from that book. This is a poem that she writes about herself. And we're going to listen to the author, Elizabeth Acevedo, actually read this excerpt. And what I'd like for you to do is just listen as she's reading. And then we're going to think about a particular sentence or full line of this poem or this text that stands out to you, a phrase and a single word. So you can start keeping that in mind, and we'll come back to this. So I'm going to go ahead and play the...
Unhideable. I am unhideable, taller than even my father, with what mommy has always said was a little too much body for such a young girl. I am the baby fat that settled into D cups and swinging hips, so that the boys who called me a whale in middle school now ask me to send them pictures of myself in a thong. The other girls call me conceited, hoe, thought, fast. When your body takes up more room than your voice, you are always the target of well-aimed rumors, which is why I let my knuckles talk for me, which is why I learned to shrug when my name was replaced by insults. I've forced my skin just as thick as I am.
Okay. So let's read this to ourselves again. And if there's one particular sentence or full line from this text that you think is the most key to understanding this character of X, what would that sentence be? And you can go ahead and put that in the chat. Thinking about a full line or sentence from this text. Thank you, Tori. Saying, when your body takes up more room than your voice. And Tammy's offering, I am unhideable. Thank you. Rose, I've forced my skin just as thick as I am. Thank you, Kimberly, for saying you can relate, but in a different way, to that idea of being unhideable, and noting the line about letting her knuckles talk for her. I am the baby fat that's settled. And Megan is giving a +1 to when your body takes up more room than your voice. All right, let's zoom in even more. If there's a particular phrase, just a part of one of these sentences, what phrase seems most key to understanding this character of X? Welcome to those who just joined us. We're just taking a look at this text, and right now we're thinking about a particular phrase that seems key to understanding this character. So you can go ahead and choose your phrase and write that in the chat.
We have Phoebe in the chat, why I learned to shrug. Kimberly says, I force my skin as thick as I am, for I think a sentence. And then we have from Megan, my body takes up more room. Rose is sharing, my name was replaced as a phrase. You have called me a whale, being highlighted.
Thank you. These are great. And then zooming in even more, if there was one particular word, if you had to choose one word to capture an idea about who this character of X is, what word would you pull out from this text? Go ahead and share that in the chat. I see skin and knuckles, unhideable a couple times, replaced, interesting. Yeah, several votes for unhideable, thick. This is great, thank you. All right, so yeah, and thanks Kimberly for noting that you know, the slang word that may not be familiar to some people. So we're going to hang on to these ideas and we're going to come back to this text. Wanted to start here and sort of spend time exploring this text that we're going to return to. Oops, sorry. What we're going to do now is shift gears a little bit to an artwork. And in just a minute, we're going to go into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes. This will be the first of 2 breakout rooms in this workshop. And each group is going to be looking at one room in a dollhouse. And your task is to take a close look at the room that your group is assigned, spend a few minutes close looking. And we're suggesting this thinking routine called looking 10 times 2, which is where you make a list of 10 things you see in the artwork, and then give it another close look and see if you can list 10 more things. If that's a helpful routine for you to do as a group, encourage you to try that. And so maybe you spend about 5 minutes on close looking, and then the other 5 minutes thinking about who is the woman who would live in this room in the dollhouse. What would this woman, based on what you see, what is your educated guess about who the woman is who lives here, what she believes, what she might care about, what she might wonder or feel? And then we'll ask each group to share out just really briefly when we come back together. I'm going to share my screen again and go to the slideshow that you guys were just looking at. And want to hear just briefly from each group a little bit about what you talked about in your room, and specifically who you think the woman is who lives in this room. So let's start with room 1. Who is in room 1 who wouldn't mind sharing just briefly what came out of your conversation? Feel free to unmute.
I was one of the people. I could share something.
Thank you.
We were kind of looking, I guess we kind of assumed it was the mother, maybe protecting the baby. I'm taking her out of the bassinet and putting it in this sort of nesting shell, white kind of marble harder thing, protecting from dangers that are lurking out the window, this bear, but also then reflected in like the alligator, or we couldn't quite figure out what was actually in the bassinet. Was that sort of a tiger pillow? Or we couldn't quite figure what that was. But then the spider was a little bit ambiguous as far as, was that another danger, or was that someone sort of maybe building a protective web? So we kind of thought the woman cared about the safety of the baby, trying to create a protective bubble, kind of that we saw in the snow globe. Even the alligator on the shelf with the jaws going to the baby. So we were sort of seeing danger and safety. The little rug underneath the bassinet, trying to create a cozy space, but definitely having our work cut out for her. I don't know if anybody else wanted to add to our discussion.
Can I ask you a question, Tori? Where do you see the baby? I see a doll. I mean, or a face of a baby that looks like, but I don't see a baby.
Yeah.
Where did you? I mean, how did you made out that there is a baby?
That's what we were calling the baby that was taken from the bassinet and put in that shell.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. That was fantastic, Tori. Was there anything else that anybody else wanted to add for this room? Okay.
That looked like a puppet though, but we also thought that it might be like a lost child. Not like maybe she lost a child, and that child that was lost was represented by the puppet and the bassinet and all the children books and the toys that are in there. So the woman who lives here, she definitely cares about safety, like like Tori said, and she believes that there are dangers obviously outside, represented by the bear, but she still wonders about a lot of things, about the child itself, children, or I don't know, maybe something that something happened with her, with a child, or with herself, maybe as a child, I don't know, something.
Thank you. Thank you, Roxana. That was great and so interesting. I mean, this room is so open to interpretation, but there are, you know, all these interesting sort of symbols of danger, and the contrast with the sort of child's room is sort of jarring and uncomfortable, I think. Great. Let's move to room 2. Who would be willing to share from this group?
Okay, we saw lots of things. So one of the first things that called my partner's attention was the window view. At the far back, she saw a mosque and some scaffolding, domes. Then we returned to the room and we started to identify these very surreal, in a way, objects. For example, this sculpture, which seems to be made of cloth in cowboy boots. And something that really we found very striking is the shadow that you can see to the left on the wall. A man wearing a cap. Okay, so, and we don't find the counterpart. We just see the object that is actually casting this shadow. And we also tried to get a good look at the elements that we found on the table. It was not clear what the sticks there are, but they are phallic, okay? And in close connection with that, we also find this other structure at the far back behind the sculpture, which also looks very cylinder and phallic, and the same as a roll of paper. And something else that caught, I don't know if my partners want to add something.
I think you're doing great, actually. You're saying everything we talked about. So I was going to chime in if I thought of something else, but I think you're doing quite well.
Shall I move on? Shall I continue? Yes.
Sure.
Because we also saw when we spotted this like concrete art work at the to the right, and now that I'm looking closer at it, there seems to be a shadow, another shadow that is that comes from the dome, from the mosque, from the window. I don't know. I wonder if you see that. Okay, as if there were some figure looking at this doll's room or doll's house room, and it's projecting onto the like taking a picture or something, somebody who might be taking a picture. And well, when the sort of person that lives here, it was very helpful for us to be told what is a woman like, because we found it a bit hard to associate it with a woman. So and one of my partners said that it looked very this woman values aesthetics. And I found it that this woman values the power of authority. Yes.
Interesting. What did you see that made you say the power of authority? I'm curious.
Well, the boots, here I am. doesn't really matter who I am, but I am here. Okay, my face does not count, my gender does not count, but here I am. And then all the other phallic objects that you find all around. Okay, so it's like we don't find flowers, and it's all, the pictures are in black and white, so it's like very harsh, very hard representation.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anything else that another group member wanted to add before we move on?
I think she really covered everything well. We had a good discussion about this, but the only thing that I was going to add, and she did at the end, was when you first told us that it was a woman, I would not have assumed that this was a woman's room. It just struck me as more masculine in my mind for some reason. But I loved when she brought up authority, because I think that's what I was noticing. So nice.
Yeah, great. And I'm seeing in the chat, Kimberly King is noting that she thinks an artist lives here. Laura is agreeing with that. So it's interesting that, you know, the associations with gender that we might be making based on what we see in this space. And, you know, is there a reason that we don't associate this studio space with a woman? Fantastic, thank you. All right, room 3. Who would like to share what you talked about in this room?
I could share for us.
Thank you, Tammy.
Part of our discussion was around the fact that the objects in the room gave off a certain vibe or idea. Are they made of similar materials, had a lot of texture, things that we associated to be more luxurious, sometimes associated more with wealth. We noticed different things like the crushed velvet on the bedspread, the textured wall, the outfit that the person, or it looks like a woman is wearing, this very ornate feathery outfit, which is not something we typically wear on a Saturday taking a webinar. So it kind of, and Kimberly had said fantasy, that this person could be someone who cares about fantasy or fitting in or wants to be in a certain place. And also that the picture on the wall reminded us of Hollywood and the old, 30s, 40s, the kind of golden era of Hollywood.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Tori's saying it looks like a boudoir. Yes, absolutely. Anything else that any of the other group members wanted to add to that? Great. I think Tammy did a great job.
I think, yeah, Tammy did a great job. So I think you covered everything.
Okay, great. So this piece, this dollhouse piece actually has 6 rooms. Yes, and Kimberly, it is striking how different the first 3 rooms are. I want to just show you the other 3 rooms briefly so that you have a sense of the whole piece, since we didn't have 6 breakout rooms. So this is room 4. Just give you a moment to look closely. Sort of this like Middle Eastern vibe. We've got these rugs lining the walls, this sort of bed chamber that's curtained back, and these like bird figures on the floor. Sort of this rich, warm red space. This is room 5. Give you a moment to look. Sort of, I find this one a little hard to parse. We've got this sort of either window or screen door covered by lace curtains. To the right, there's this like floral wallpaper, and on it is hanging this, it looks like sort of it might be like a mask sculpture, but it also kind of looks like jewelry to me. And then beneath it, is sort of this object. It looks like a stump, maybe with a kind of like a snake figure wrapped around it. And then we have the plant on the left. And then finally, room 6. It's what appears to be the kitchen of the dollhouse. I love sort of like the stove on the right. It's like made out of fabric. It's this soft sculpture. And then we've got, this bright yellow wallpaper with the florals. You see a clock on the wall. There's a cat on the floor in front of the sink. And then if you notice, if you look out through the window over the sink, or what appears to me to be a window, it looks like we see this scene of these rows of men all dressed alike with these caps on. There's a lot to parse. It's complex and interesting. So any new impressions having seen all 6 of the rooms? Feel free to either unmute or add in the chat. Maria, great question. Wondering if it's the same person who lives in each of these rooms, or are they different people?
I mean, they look so different, and I really feel drawn to this one, to the last one. I didn't quite like the others, so I wonder if it's if there were different members in the family and each member is responsible for a different room, or if it's the same person.
Right. Yeah, I definitely find myself more drawn to some of these rooms than others, and there are stark differences. Laura is adding an interesting idea that maybe it represents different stages of their lives.
So the idea of one person having different moments in time that look different.
And Kimberly is adding, maybe it's different personalities of different types of women. Fantastic.
Now, why do you insist on the fact that it is a woman who lives? I mean, what I wonder about that. Or maybe you said it at the beginning and I missed it because I joined in late.
No, I'll be adding a little bit more information about this piece as we get further. So the artist did intend this to represent women. So I'll explain more as we go, but I did want to sort of give you that little piece of context. So we are going to come back to this, and we're going to keep referring to this dollhouse piece throughout our time together. I'm going to go back to the main slides again. And I want to now connect this dollhouse piece to Unhideable, the text that we read at the beginning. If you had to connect this character of X that we explored with the rooms that we looked at in the dollhouse, which room might others want X to fit into? And which room might X feel most comfortable in? And think about what makes you say that. So I'll give you a moment to think, and feel free to unmute or write in the chat. Reread the text if you need to. Kimberly, can you tell us a little bit more about why you think they want her to be in the movie star room?
I'm saying that because, well, she's growing up and she's getting the man gaze, and she's it's offensive for her. It's not in a welcomed way, and so but I think that's how they are seeing her. They're looking at her through that, as how Hollywood wants to create this personification of a sexy woman, and she was, that's it. It wasn't comfortable for her. It wasn't a good experience for her. Yeah,
I think that's really well said and insightful. Thank you. And it sounds like our other Kimberly agrees with you. Any other thoughts? What about which room she might feel most comfortable in? Based on what information you have, if you had to guess.
I sort of feel like she might feel that she is in that nursery room with sort of unintended dangers, or ones that she might, they're kind of, and everywhere she looks, a potential danger. But I think she might feel most comfortable in that middle room on the right with the red carpets. That's a little more padded and protected, neutral almost, but a place where she can just kind of be herself in this safer space.
Got it. I like that. Thank you, Tori. And I like the differentiation between which one she might feel most comfortable in versus which one sort of represents her or where she's at. And I see Megan is voting for 2. So I think that's the artist studio. Or sorry, Kimberly. Kimberly said that, and Megan as well. Yeah, so being in a room where she can express herself. And we talked about that room maybe having less of the sort of stereotypical femininity that we see in maybe room 3. So I think that's a really interesting option as well. And Rose is voting for room 4 as well. Okay. We're going to add another layer here. Going to introduce you to Ms. Galliano, who is another character in the poet X. This is X writing about her favorite teacher, Ms. Galliano. So we're going to add this new character. And this time I'm going to invite you to read this with me out loud. And I know over Zoom that's going to sound like a big mess, but that's going to be totally fine. I'm going to invite you to unmute, and it's okay if we're not in sync, but let's all just, read this aloud if you're in a space where you can and hear it. So let's begin with the title, Ms. Galliano. Feel free to unmute. Ms. Galliano is not what I expected. Everyone talks about her like she's super strict and always assigning the toughest homework. So I expected someone older, a buttoned up, floppy haired, suit wearing teacher with glasses sliding down her nose. Ms. Galliano is young, has on bright colors, and wears her hair naturally curly. She's also little, like for real petite, but carries herself big. Know what I mean? Like she's used to shouldering her way through any assumptions made about her. Today, I have her first period English. And after an hour and 15 minutes of icebreakers, where we learn each other's names, Ms. Galliano pronounces mine right on the first try. She gives us our first assignment. Write about the most impactful day of your life. And although it's the first week of school, and teachers always bake the funk the first week, I have a feeling Ms. Galliano actually wants to know my answer. All right, give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you. Feel free to remute yourselves if you'd like. That wasn't as messy as I expected. You guys did a good job. All right, so we're going to, again, pull out a sentence, phrase, and word from this text to explore this character of Ms. Galliano. So looking back through it, what one sentence do you think captures who Ms. Galliano is, or alternatively, who she is to X? And go ahead and you can put that one sentence in the chat. Yeah, I love that line too, Kimberly, about faking the funk. She's expecting fake, but she doesn't get that from Ms. Galliano. Yeah, Rose. Ms. Galliano pronounces mine right on the first try. Laura is saying carries herself big. Maria is saying she wants to know. Great. What about a smaller phrase? I think some of those, carries herself big and she wants to know are getting closer to a phrase. So let's move into that. We're zooming in. What phrase would you pull out? Not what I expected. I think that captures a lot. Actually wants to know, the most impactful. Great. And what about a single word? Yeah, I've got a second here for write about the most impactful day of your life. Kimberly, are you saying that maybe this poem is what X was writing about? Okay. Got assumptions for the last, for the last one, got it. Feelings, bright.
I feel it's not so much about Ms. Galliano, it's about the speaker of this poem. So that's why I have focused on how the speaker feels and not so much on Ms. Galliano.
Yeah. Seems this poem is really about how Ms. Galliano makes this student feel. Yeah, for me, I love that those lines at the bottom of the first column where she talks about she's little but carries herself big, like she's used to shouldering her way through any assumptions made out of her. That's just so evocative to me about who this person is. All right. So, which room would Miss Galliano fit into in the dollhouse? If you had to guess, which one would she feel most connected to? Maria, can I ask why you chose room 6?
Because it's the warmest one, and I think that Ms. Galliano she's caring, and even though everybody seemed to say that she's quite strict, she actually cares. And maybe she's an elderly teacher, okay, so, and she likes to take care of every detail as she has in her kitchen.
I like that, thank you. Do others agree with that, or do you see other rooms where Miss Galliano might fit?
I would. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I agree with the kitchen. Just the bright colors just stand out to me, and it seems so happy on the inside. And the soldiers out the window, I keep coming back to, but just the brightness, and even the cat on the floor. It just seems like a place where she would fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with the kitchen as well, sort of as a place of nourishment and feeding her students' minds and souls, as well as kind of protection against that army of whatever's out there. And also that she's petite and little, and it kind of look like little appliances, and she's little enough to kind of notice the cat and the mice and take care of them as well. Alternately, I was also drawn to that red room because it also is colorful, but I think the kitchen fits maybe a little more with her.
Great. Yeah, I think these are really insightful connections. And yeah, I'll second that, Kimberly, the idea of nourishing the soul. I think that really fits well. And Kimberly King is saying she could be in the artist studio because of the evidence of planning. Interesting. Yeah. Teachers, like artists, are creative planners, and I think there's definitely a connection that could be made there. Okay. Allie, did you take note of some of the sentence, phrase, word that we came up with for the character of X back at the beginning?
Yeah, I pulled out a few. I pulled out one for each that seemed to resonate, or that was repeated. Should I say those right now?
Please, yes. Let's remind us.
All right. So for X, I pulled out the sentence that I think two people had said, which is when your body takes up more room than your voice. For the phrase, I pulled out my name was replaced. And then our greatest hit word was unhideable for X.
Great. Thank you. So now we've looked at these two characters of X and Miss Galliano. How are these two characters different in their what they believe or care about, or even like in the roles they play in their own lives? How do you see these characters, the differences between these two women? How would you characterize, who these two people are and how they might relate to one another? Oh, thanks for joining us, Maria. Sorry you have to leave.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Kimberly saying both have a tough exterior, Phoebe.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting parallel. Is their tough exterior different or created by different things, do you think?
Both are working against assumptions as well, another commonality.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's how other people see X and Ms. Galliano, and there's who they are on the inside. And there's this tension for both of the characters.
Yeah, and kind of those expectations, and sort of the carries herself big. Ms. Galliano carries herself big, and X is also trying to find a way to carry herself maybe tougher, but trying to sort of feel good about being big and carrying herself and owning that being big.
Yeah. Great. And let's see, Rose is saying, seems like Xiomara draws attention just by existing. Ms. Galliano intentionally shoulders her way. Yeah. So just that contrast in how they're using their bodies, or how they are able to feel about their bodies, making their way through the world. And Laura's saying she wants to be able to carry herself like Ms. Galliano. Maybe she admires her. Yeah. Beautiful. All right. I do want to give you a little bit more context about this dollhouse piece. So now you can see the full, what the full piece looks like. This is not currently on view at the Smithsonian American Art Museum, but it's often on view in our Luce Center. So hopefully you'll be able to visit someday and see it. This was made in 1972 by an artist named Miriam Shapiro. And she was also assisted by Sherry Brody, who was one of her art students at the time. And Miriam Shapiro is an enormously important figure in the history of feminist art. She was, an artist who first really made her mark as part of the New York School, which was not a hospitable place for women artists back in the day. And she really embraced the political ideology of women's liberation and feminism when that movement was really taking shape in the 60s, early 70s. And she was seeking a way to carry some of those ideas and principles over to create sort of a visual form of feminism. She co-founded the feminist art program at Cal Arts with the artist Judy Chicago in 1971. And this was sort of the first of its kind program. And in the first couple of years, the students and professors collaborated on creating this installation art project that kind of became legendary called Woman House, where they transformed a rundown Hollywood mansion into this immersive art installation where they had pop-up experiences as well. And each room was sort of transformed into an installation that conveyed different aspects of women's experience and sort of the conventions of womanhood. So Dollhouse was created as part of that installation. So it's sort of like this mini version of Woman House inside the larger Woman House. And Shapiro really talks about how this explored the shifting identities that she experienced as an artist, wife, and mother in this particular moment in time as well. And I just thought this quote that I found from Miriam Shapiro really connected well to this piece. She says, "Women see themselves in fragments, in parts, not only mind, body, but also parts of the body." And Kimberly, I see your question. Yes, I will be happy to share the slideshow of rooms with you. I'll send some resources along on Monday. So yes, you'll have access to that. I'm glad you'll find it useful. Okay, so now that you just have a little bit more context about the Dollhouse piece, thinking about all three texts that we explored, because we really can think about this artwork as a text in its own right. What themes do you see running through all of them? Unhideable, Ms. Galliano, and Dollhouse. Are there any themes that you see sort of linking all three?
I sort of see interior and exterior, what we see, what we show the world or what the world sees, and what's actually inside or how we view ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And you may have noticed when you see the full Dollhouse here, there are actually these like shutters or doors that could be closed over these rooms, which I think just adds to that idea of like internality versus externality, and closing yourself off versus what you show to the outside world. And Roxanne is adding strength as a woman. Yeah, and sort of the complexities in that. Great. Kimberly's adding the idea of becoming. Yeah, I really like that. Or as a mother. Yep. Beautiful.
Complexities, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's lots of room to explore complexity here. Just in this idea of womanhood and what that means, there's infinite complexities, right? Okay, we're going to take a break in just a few minutes, so you will have a chance to stretch and use the bathroom if you need to. Before we do that, I just want to take a moment to step back now that we've had this sort of full experience, really exploring in depth these texts paired with this artwork. Think about what was the role of the artwork in this activity? What did that do for your understanding of the two written texts? And along with that, was this a useful pairing of art and text? If so, what made it useful or good? And if it didn't work for you, why not? So I'll give you a moment just to reflect on that a little bit. And if you have anything you'd like to share in the chat or unmute, I'd love to hear.
And it definitely helped me when we had to put the characters into a room, just because it was sort of, just kind of woke up my thinking about that character and where would they fit, and sort of looking at them, the character in a different way and the room in a different way, and how would they fit and why would they fit. So sort of being able to fit them into a room added a new dimension to the character, but also sort of reshaped the room a little bit as well.
Great.
So I would
Thank
say
you.
it is a good pairing because it sort of just added to both the tech, both the written words and the visual.
Yeah. We really use the artwork as sort of a prompt for understanding these characters in the text. Right. Let's see, Allie, what are you seeing in the
So
chat?
Kimberly Knopfsinger has just added, it forces you to consider the texts from new angles, to go back to the text and the images repeatedly, and saying that you get new insights and connections when you're rereading these different texts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this was a slow process, right? This took time for us to really read closely, to look closely and read closely and reread. So I think that's a really good point. Thank you. All right. I'm going to give us a quick break, just because I think we all need a moment to stretch and, use the bathroom if we need to, get some water. And then when we come back in about 5 minutes, we're going to sort of do a little bit more brainstorming about the characteristics of a good art and text pairing. And then for the rest of your time, you're going to have a chance to actually practice pairing an art and text yourself. So we're going to give you we're going to assign you a poem and give you a collection of artwork to explore. And you'll have a chance to actually sort of put some of these ideas into practice. So let's come back together at 11:15, and feel free to just, turn your cameras off, unmute, or keep yourself muted, and then we'll resume at 11:15. All right, hopefully everyone is on their way back if you're not already. And I'm just going to share this Jamboard to bring us back in. And Allie is posting a link to the Jamboard in the chat. So we're going to come back with this reflection question about what makes an artwork and text pairing good or useful. And I'd love it if we could just sort of brainstorm as a group some of the characteristics that might make for a good art and text pairing. And if you haven't used Jamboard before, on the left side of the screen, there's a little sticky note icon, and you can click on that and you should be able to add your idea on a sticky note to post on this Jamboard. So let's just take a few minutes. Looks like we've got a couple people on the Jamboard, but maybe still waiting for some people to come back from the break. But let's start brainstorming on this question. Good. Seeing lots of people popping in. This is great. I'm trying not to talk while you're writing so I don't distract you. So I'm going to give you just another 30 seconds or so, and then we'll start looking at these together. Great. Okay, so I'm seeing something, I'm seeing a couple, actually, both of these pink ones, sort of appropriately, are talking about, using the artwork as a text in its own right, I think. So enriches your understanding of both the text and the art and adds depth and complexity to both texts. I'm seeing on the green sticky note, it helps you to see something in a new way. So maybe the artwork can provide a new perspective. I can see the art can provide discussion ideas. I'm also seeing a couple people saying that maybe there's an unexpected connection, something that might not seem obvious at first, but adds depth or sort of an aha moment. And then I'm also seeing something that makes a natural connection. So sometimes an art and text pairing might seem really clear based on the content and themes being aligned, and sometimes it's a little bit less clear when they complement each other without telling the whole story. Just trying to catch all of these. Allie, what am I missing?
Sorry, I was still muted. Let me see. What haven't we said? Are there any that stand out to any of our participants as being especially meaningful to them that somebody else contributed?
I'm curious about words are parallel to the illustration. I don't know who added that one, but I'd love a little bit more context about your thought there.
So I guess that words are sort of you're illustrating what or whatever the phrase is or the word is illustrated. It's become visual.
Mm.
The art is the visual aspect, and the words are something that I think the answer would be more in the image, but it could go either way depending. Now that I see, we've looked at poems and so it could be more than just a phrase, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's an interesting idea, right? Because, when we looked at Dollhouse, it's not initially at all an obvious illustration of the text, but I think it does illustrate a lot of the ideas, sort of the, these ideas of like women being stereotyped or compartmentalized. So I think, we can think about that idea of illustration in a broad way.
I just appreciate whoever did since our name's on them, the yellow Post-it note on the left there at the top, talking about layers of understanding and depth to each, because that's just a perfect word for it. I like the layers with which you have to dive into both the texts. And I just like that word choice.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Is there anything else that is standing out to anybody or you have a question about? Is there an idea that we're missing here?
I was just going to say, sometimes as a teacher, it can be hard. We want to keep prompting our students and providing questions and such. I feel like artwork and in this activity with the dollhouse, that layers really stands out to me, because we're not prompting them. The pictures, the artwork is what's prompting them. So it really lets us as teachers stand back and be a facilitator, which is always a little bit, far more powerful than being the prompter for everything. So I just really appreciate kind of the insight that I've gained from doing this as far as that.
Thank you for making that point. I think one of the really wonderful things about artwork is that, there are often no wrong answers, right? It sort of lets students take ownership over their learning and make their own connections based on what they see and their personal connections to a piece or associations with it. So I think it really does allow students to take ownership and for the teacher to step back. And I think that's great. All right. I think this is a really solid list, and we can continue thinking about this and adding to it. But I want to make sure we give you time for the next portion. This workshop, unsurprisingly, is going quickly. So we're going to do one more round of breakout rooms. This one will be a little bit longer, more like 20 minutes. And when you're in your breakout room, you're going to be assigned a poem. Allie, how many rooms are we going to do you think? Should we just do 2 or 3?
If we do 2, we'll have, if we do 3, we'll have 3 in 2 of the rooms and 2 in 1 of the rooms. Whereas if we do 2, we would have 3 in all of the rooms. So
let's just do 2 rooms.
Actually, we'll have 4 in each of them if we do 2.
I think that's a perfect size. So you'll be, again, we're going to share a different Google Slides with you. And based on your breakout room number, you'll be sent to a particular slide and a particular poem. What I'd like you to do as a group is read your poem together. You can decide whether you want to read it aloud or silently to yourselves, and then sort of brainstorm the themes that seem key to this text. Maybe pull out one in particular that you think is like the strongest theme. And there's a place for you to note that on the slide that we'll share. And then we're going to send you to a collection of artworks that we've curated for you on the Smithsonian Learning Lab. And you'll have the opportunity to explore those artworks and sort of look at them with an eye towards thematic connections to your poem. And we've chosen the artworks with, not with specific connections to specific poems in mind, but really looking at artworks that have a broad range of potential connections. So there's no wrong answer. For some of the artworks, there is some background information available that might help you narrow down your selections. but really just sort of try to pull out maybe 2 artworks that you think might have the strongest connection to your poem. And then hopefully you'll have time to discuss a little bit how you might connect your artwork and poem, like what strategies might you use? Thinking about the activity we did with Dollhouse, would you use any of those same strategies? Would you use any other thinking routines or methods that you've used in your own teaching? So that is your assignment. And we've chosen the poems with there's a mix of poems that might be very familiar to you and ones that you've probably never seen before. So I encourage you to look at the other poems beyond the one that your group is assigned, and hopefully it gives you some new ideas for poetry to use as well. Well, I'm eager to hear what you did have time to talk about and put together. So we just have 10 minutes left in our time together. I would love to hear from each group a little bit about what your poem was, what theme you pulled out, and if you made an artwork connection or more than one. So I'm going to share the slides that you were working on. So group 1, would anybody like to start us off sharing?
Well, I can say something, but I don't want to carry the whole conversation.
Thank you for starting us off.
This is I Hear America Singing by Walt Whitman. And should I read it for everybody since, we're all doing different ones, or no?
I don't think we need to read the whole thing. Just
okay.
Let us know what themes you pulled out.
All right. So we read through this, and the major theme was all of these people working and singing. And then we noticed that there was just one line for women, even though it's very important, the delicious singing of a mother of the young wife at work, or a girl sewing or washing, right?
Yep.
And so for me, when I looked at the artwork, I saw workers. And so I saw 2 artworks that would reflect the work, working, and that is the sculpture by Barthay.
Yep.
The woman holding the basket and having one on her head.
Yep.
And then the painting called Braceros. It's a story about workers.
Yep.
It's not necessarily, neither one of these have, to do with this idea of America, but I think that, we just don't hear about that part because these people are a part of America, so, but during Walt Whitman's time, he wasn't going to probably address that. Now, somebody else in the group found some other parallels, so I'll let them talk.
Thanks, Kimberly.
I would just sort of add, so we didn't get to sort of condense and narrow down and come to our final choices. Everybody sort of agreed with those or liked those choices. I also added kind of the subway or tenement flats, just to kind of give the number of all the different sort of various workers and voices singing America. There was something about the Mono Lake, I guess, that sort of had that feeling of Purple Mountain's majesty, kind of America to it. Didn't really relate to our themes so much, but we were kind of circling around different things of America. And I think our earlier work with the women kind of got us into that, the gender roles and what's going on in this poem and our time versus his time and those sorts of things. But
right,
interesting.
Great. And I love, what you were saying, Kimberly, about how Braceros and Blackberry Woman maybe bring in perspectives that we didn't see in Whitman's poem. So it's not just illustrating the poem, right? It's creating it's branching off and giving us new perspectives to connect with the poem and maybe highlight absences. And that's a really valuable use of a pairing as well. So thank you. Did you have a chance to think at all about strategies, or did you not quite get to that point?
No, we didn't get to that part.
Okay.
We needed you.
Well, I'm thinking you have so many artworks that could connect. It could be a great use of sort of a like almost a jigsaw exercise with students where they each look at a different work and then make a connection and then share out to each other, and sort of that could be a way to bring in more of these perspectives. And Roxana, you're saying we could add music to it? I'd love to hear more about that. Any particular, just like additional texts to bring in songs you're thinking?
Yeah. Or I mean, to give us an idea of what time is the poem from? Like, I mean, what era are they talking about? Because the language, the way the poem is written, it's not actual, it's not modern.
Yeah.
Very different. So maybe the music could help with it.
Great. I love that idea. Thank you. Okay. Let's make sure we have time to hear our group 2. And this group had a poem by Joy Harjo. Who would like to start us off? Share what you talked about. A brave volunteer.
So basically this poem was about remembering kind of your lineage and where you came from, and then also honoring the world within which you're placed. And so our themes that we came up with, we liked this idea of being interconnected, as well as memory, and then just the continuity and lineage. So from there, we had a really fun discussion with all of the different art pieces, and it was really tough for us to narrow it down. The first one Rose found, it was called State Lines, and it's down toward the bottom.
State names, yeah.
Or state names, sorry. And we felt like this piece, Rose said it best, but I think this artist is also Native American, like Joy, and just this whole idea of like these borders that we have put up around these states and kind of defining, like making these definitions of states when they didn't exist before America was colonized. So we found that to be really powerful.
Great.
And we liked so many other pieces, but I really appreciated kind of the abstract nature of the dollhouse. So I was looking for that with these. And so I chose the breakfast tacos, or we chose the breakfast tacos, I'll say. And I just thought like the cycle of like how food gets to our plates and how memories are made around mealtime, and just like all of those family dynamics and like remembering where you came from and how stories are told around mealtime could kind of be connected to this piece as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think those are really strong connections and kind of 2 different ways that you could go with it. Anything else that any group members for group 2 wanted to add? Any thoughts about strategies or anything else you talked about?
Somebody mentioned doing quick writes with this, or free writes, and we talked about the use of jam boards. We really liked that as far as jotting down our ideas, and we talked about stealing your idea for the 10 by 2 or 10 times 2.
Mhm.
It's a great way to get students to come up with their own ideas and not have just a loose framework for ideas.
Great. Love it. All right. Well, I hate to cut this conversation short, but I see that we are at 11:59. I'm going to stop my share here. So I want to just thank you again for participating today and spending 2 of your hours, your precious weekend hours with us. I'm going to send around some follow-up resources on Monday, and I'll send you a participation certificate as well. So just let me know if you need anything else. If you have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me. Well, you'll get an email from me. So I don't need to put that in the chat, but I'd love to continue the conversation. If you have additional thoughts and questions or feedback from the workshop, we'd love to hear that as well, because that really makes us better at our jobs when we hear from you. So, oh, thank you, Tammy, for sharing that. Looks like Sam just posted breakfast tacos on our Instagram. Cool connection.
Timing.
It is. So I hope this was valuable for you and that you have new ideas rolling around in your head, and I hope you go forth and enjoy the rest of your weekend. So thank you again for coming today.